California. The name alone conjures up images of sunshine, surfers, beaches, and of course, Hollywood. But further north, the scenery changes drastically. The beaches and sunshine of the south are replaced by lush forests, majestic mountains, and wild rivers. This region, with its 15,000 hectares or 37,000 acres of dense forest, attracts hikers, hunters, and fishermen from all over the world, eager to explore its natural beauty. One particularly scenic road connecting the towns of Willow Creek and Happy Camp takes travelers through a redwood forest with trees among the tallest on the planet. But tourists coming to Willow Creek, nestled south of the Oregon border, are after more than just the scenery. For centuries, a shadow has stalked the woods here, inciting panic and spreading rumors.
You don't see them unless they want you to see them. They're very elusive. Some people call them tree peekers.
Somewhere between 6 and 8 feet tall and covered in brown or reddish or blackish fur.
It was dark brown to black hair. It had a protruding brow ridge, a pointy cone head.
They're very careful. They know the woods a lot better than we do, and they don't want to be seen.
The creature has footprints that look like this. It's usually big and bulky.
They still do not know what the creature was that had the tracks.
That's Indian Creek, and that's where these people were when they saw it scooping up water in its hand.
There was something in my yard that was big and heavy and made the ground shake. I don't think it was a bear, and it sure didn't sound like a deer.
Then all of a sudden, this big shadow with arms and legs and a head walks behind us, going that way.
He said, my biologist found an elk with its head twisted off.
Ran up to my wife and kids and said, let's go, move. And they're like, you know, what's your problem? I go, now, move.
Nestled in the heart of the Six Rivers National Forest, Willow Creek is known as the world capital of Bigfoot. The best place to search for the ape-like monster that walks on 2 feet and was known by Native Americans as Sasquatch.
Willow Creek is probably the most concrete base for Bigfoot. If you're looking for Bigfoot and if you want to find people who have information regarding Bigfoot, Willow Creek is the center of that story, that lore, the history of it. We have many people in our community who have seen, heard, felt, smelled, found his dens. You can find a lot of good stories about Bigfoot here in our town, and we have a lot of believers.
Well, there's a variety of local legends, and there's a lot of local tradition that goes back quite a long time in the Hoopa Valley, and then north in the Yurok area, and then northeast in the Karuk area. I think the rumors, the stories in the local area go back 6,000 to 7,000 years, with all the local tribes having stories about it.
There are lots of Native American stories of lots of different creatures in the woods. And a Bigfoot-type creature is among those.
There was a notorious history of a larger, hairier creature that lived in that area.
You know, these cultures didn't have an image of an ape back in the early days. The more traditional members of the culture will probably tell you that it's a spirit of some kind, not an animal at all.
In their languages, they all had names that reflected physical beings. For instance, the White River Apache have a name for this thing that literally means big, hairy man. The Blackfeet in Montana have a name that means big feet. And they all have different understanding of what these are. The Dene, Navajo, in the Four Corners area, believe that the more often this being is seen, the closer we are to the end times.
people see them around here still to this day. Just ordinary people. But some of these people working up in the area saw the creature at night, you know, when they're driving home from work, just crossing the dirt roads out in the woods. Locals who fish or hunt, they see them out in the mountains. Some local people describe seeing them just in their backyards. You know, we don't have fences here. We have, your backyard is mountains that go on for miles and miles and miles. In 1958, they were building this road up there into Bluff Creek. It was virgin timber for the most part up in there, and they wanted to do some logging.
There was a construction project in the area, then they found really strange footprints, and this finally got out to the coast as a story about Bigfoot.
These original tracks, they had a very human-like appearance, you know, and this is where the word, the name Bigfoot really was born. They were found many different times around the tractors. You know, they'd leave the tractors up there at night and go home down here for the most part. And when they'd come back in the morning, they'd find this.
These workers witnessed other disturbing things. Pieces of heavy machinery, some of which weighed hundreds of pounds, were found well into the forest. A trail of mysterious footprints leading up to them. Willow Creek is intimately linked with the Bigfoot legend, as anyone who has visited the town knows. The Bigfoot Books Library is a veritable goldmine of records, eyewitness accounts, and documented evidence. Its owner is happy to talk about the mysterious creature and shed some light on the mystery.
There are these mystery primates pretty much everywhere across the world, through Central Europe, Asia, Siberia, the Himalayas, up and down the coast of Asia, all through the Indian subcontinent, into Africa, you know, South America. About the only place they're not really legitimately described is out on the islands of Polynesia, but I mean, out farther like Hawaii, but throughout Indonesia, there are plenty of these mystery apes.
I am convinced that there's Bigfoot, and it's not only here. It's absolutely worldwide. When we had, I think it was 2003 symposium, a Russian scientist came from Russia and brought books on their honesty, which is also a Bigfoot creature. And I met Heath, who was a publisher of a book called The Yowie in Australia. So they have a creature in Australia that's similar to the Bigfoot.
I don't think there is one missing link, right? I think we still are apes. We are primates. We are very, very closely related to the chimpanzee. Some biologists consider us to be the third chimpanzee, you know. We think we're very special, you know, and different and unique because our civilization has dominated the world, but we are animals and we did evolve naturally.
Much of the evidence surrounding Bigfoot's existence is surprising, and not just by the nature of the facts themselves, but by the amazing credibility of their authors. In July of 2000, Dr. Matthew Johnson was hiking with his family in a national park when he was suddenly overcome by the feeling that he was being followed.
I was looking down the slope to try to see if I could see what it might be that was, you know, paralleling us. Keep in mind, the slope of the mountain is like this. I'm up here. My family's about 50, 60 feet over here down on the trail. So I'm looking, all of a sudden I see movement out of the left corner of my eye. And I turn and I look, and down slope is when I saw Bigfoot walk off the pages of myth and legend into reality. I was up the mountain, up the slope behind a natural blind. it couldn't see me. When I saw that, everything I knew about the outdoors, grew up in Oregon, lived in Alaska for 20 years, everything I knew, hiking, camping, fishing, a little bit of hunting, came crashing down. I literally felt my brain crash, reboot, and then I had some real protective instincts kick in. You know, that was my family down there. I ran down through the brush and trees, avoided eye contact because the only thing I knew what to do was in Alaska with the grizzly bear, you don't do the eye contact thing because they'll see it as a challenge. So I avoided the eye contact, hit the trail, ran up to my wife and kids and said, let's go, move. And they're like, you know, what's your problem? I go, now, move. And they're like, okay. So I move them up the trail a couple 100 yards, around a switchback, another 100 yards. I'm not seeing anything, I'm not hearing anything, I'm not smelling anything. I sit the kids down on a log and I give them some water. I pull my wife aside and I said, you're not gonna believe what I saw. And she said, what? And I said, I saw Bigfoot. And she said, I believe you.
Immediately after this encounter, Dr. Johnson told his story to a park ranger who had no trouble believing it. But Matthew Johnson's troubling testimony is not the only one to be marked with a seal of credibility. Bob Schmalzbach is a retired Silicon Valley engineer and the former president of the town of Happy Camp's Chamber of Commerce. He's also a Bigfoot guru, having spent 7 years examining the possible evidence for its existence in collaboration with the University of Oxford. He operates a website compiling Bigfoot research.
All over this place, we have sightings on a pretty, not a routine basis. I have seen them using thermal imagers. I've seen them using night vision. I've been with people that saw them that because I'm usually the one taking pictures and whatnot, I wasn't fortunate enough to see them. I've had them photographed, watching me photographing footprints, things like that. But because we always went out in a team, and I had my duties, and everybody else had theirs. This beach on the other side of Highway 96 is called China Point or China Flat. And it turns out that now that I've been here and got to talk to people here, there have probably been 15 or 20 sightings at this point. If you stop here for a second and just listen, all you can hear is the river. You don't hear cars, you don't hear trains, you don't hear buses, you just hear the river. So it's a unique place.
Bob returns to the exact spot where Bigfoot has repeatedly been surprised trying to cross a road.
You can see the 25, this is a 25-mile-an-hour sign. You could see that from where it happened. So between it and that guardrail is where it happened. Whatever it was came up from down there by the river, stepped right over this, took 2 or 3 steps across this hill, and within just 30 seconds, it was to the top of that. Up at the top of that ridge, you see all the shorter trees. Those were not there. And that person said they heard rustling up there, they thought it was a deer, looked up there, and this thing was looking up, standing there at the edge, looking down at her. And when it turned to walk away, she could see the soles of its feet, and they were lighter colored. This experience, and seeing this for the first time myself, is why I got started investigating Bigfoot, because before then I thought it was a novelty and kind of interesting, but when I saw the physical evidence that supported the eyewitness reports here, I knew there had to be something more to it, so I went on the road to find out.
Bob found footprints on top of this hill, which he believes supports the testimony of eyewitnesses who claim to have seen something that night. After reviewing the hill, he considers it highly unlikely that a normal human could ascend so steep a slope. The Bigfoot legend casts a wide shadow over Willow Creek. Fingerprints taken in the region and thought to belong to a beast are so numerous that a special annex was constructed for them in the China Flat Museum.
In the Bigfoot room is predominantly casts from people that have taken tracks, like Al Hodgson, who's curator here, longtime friend of John Green, who was one of the early writers about Bigfoot, and other people locally that over the years have seen casts where they've taken a cast and brought in. And there's also some of the first articles written in the newspapers about having seen tracks, what were they, and that sort of thing. And it's just grown from there.
Al Hodgson, who gave me this cast, he signed the back of it here. He's still alive here, just up on the hill. They found these tracks, and they just happened to know a fellow named Bob Titmus, who was a taxidermist in Anderson over by Reading here on Highway 5. And he had taught Jerry Crew how to make plaster casts. So Jerry Crew is seen in a photo in the Humboldt Times newspaper holding the track like this, you know, and that really made a big impression on just about everybody. So it hit the AP Newswire, and it went out all across the world.
What it's important to say is that people just assume that you can make a plywood cutout of a Bigfoot and go around tromping around and make a bunch of footprints that are going to fool somebody. If you have bigger feet on your feet than your actual feet, then that's like snowshoes. Why would people ever have snowshoes? So that they don't sink into the snow. Well, in the same way, if you're going to be a human-sized person with some great big feet, you're not going to sink in even to fairly soft mud. So if you've got feet like that, a number of things aren't going to change. Your weight isn't going to change. Your stride length isn't going to change. In fact, if anything, it's going to get shorter because you're so clumsy carrying these clumping things. But just as important, the way a plywood foot hits the ground is not the way that a real foot hits the ground. Real feet have toe position changes. When real feet hit the ground, if this is a foot, as they move forward and they made a break right there at the toes, there's a little bit of ridge of dirt pushback. There's all kinds of dynamic things that happen with a real foot, but not with some plywood thing.
Richard Stepp is a professor of physics at the Humboldt University and one of the few scientists who dares to publicly admit that a Bigfoot-like creature could exist. He cites Grover Krantz, the famous anthropologist who died in 2002 and was known for his work on Bigfoot. After analyzing a slew of foot imprints, Krantz believed that some of them were genuine. Some footage captured in 1967 during the filming of a movie by Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin provides another disturbing piece of Bigfoot evidence.
Patterson and Gimlin filmed themselves on the sandbar, you know? So they had switched when they got to Bigfoot on film, the camera roll actually ended, and that's when you see the creature walking away in the distance. It just ends. Unfortunately, they couldn't follow it and get more footage of it. They had to go on, he went under a tarp, you know, and switched the camera roll with a new roll of film. You know, a lot of people want to make Bigfoot into like some kind of big, glorious, fascinating, monstrous legend, you know, but if the truth is just a mundane, ordinary thing, that's more valuable to me than some big tall tale. Were you to walk upstream here, you'd have to go about 25, 30 miles to get into the heart of the Bluff Creek watershed and the area where the film was shot, the famous footprint finds and stuff. People talk about it wherever you go. And the history of it is just everywhere out in the landscape here, if you study it at all, you know. I can't help it because people tell me, you know, down at Aikens Creek, they found a footprint a couple years ago. And so people come in with their photographs of footprints and shadows in the woods that they think are Bigfoot.
Many people consider this video captured at Bluff Creek to be definitive proof of the existence of Bigfoot. but the nature of the creature in the video remains an unsolved mystery. The family of one of the filmmakers, Robert Gimlin, tightly controls the film itself. But despite this restriction, the image in the center of the controversy can be found all over the internet. But the image is of extremely low quality. We tried to reduce the blur to better analyze it and perhaps get a sense of what really happened that day. But with the original version of the film unavailable, questions remained unanswered.
Well, this is an image, the most famous one from the Patterson-Gimlin film from 1967 up in Bluff Creek. And this was taken from a 50 megabyte scan from a transparency that was taken from the original film. Most people who've seen the film and dismiss it as blurry, grainy, don't realize that there is this kind of quality of imagery. If you can see this, if we could just find that original film or get a published version of this out there, I think it would convince a lot more people. You don't see like zippers and seams and baggy flaps and fake fur. You see something that looks like muscles are moving under the skin. You see what appears to be the motion of the hands and the toes and the face and the breasts on the front of the creature.
A man named Bob Hieronymus later claimed to have worn a monkey suit for the making of the film. But Patterson and Gimlin have always maintained that the scene filmed in 1967 was genuine.
It looks pretty darn realistic. It's still not enough to prove that the creature is real. You know, for every person that believes that that's a real Bigfoot, there will be another who says that just looks like a man in an ape suit.
I've had people come into the museum, two gentlemen from who knows where, dressed up in business suits, take one look at the picture of Patterson, which is on our wall as you come in the door. And one said to the other one, "Oh, you can see the face zippered on. And it's a guy in a costume." Well, if you look quickly at Patterson's film, it is a female Bigfoot. It is not a guy in a costume. Even Hollywood said at the time that Patterson filmed in '67, that costume could not have been manufactured.
Well, you know, I think the proof would be finding a body of one. Hopefully, you know, not hunted down and killed, but something found along the highway, a piece of a body. There's these attempts now with genetics to prove it through DNA.
Now, some people say that DNA evidence would suffice, but really, there's been no DNA evidence of it. The people have submitted hair fibers and all kinds of different things. There was recently a study published online by a veterinarian named Ketchum, who said, you know, we have this DNA evidence, and all she actually discovered was that there was genetic material of people, and then there were anomalies. But that anomalies does not prove there's Bigfoot. It just means that she found anomalies. You can find anomalies in all kinds of genetic material.
Genetic analyses have been conducted on all kinds of materials attributed to a Bigfoot, but the conclusions usually reveal them to have come from bears or porcupines. Dr. Johnson still spends most of his time devoted to his Bigfoot passion, and to his mind, it has paid off.
I put in about 10 years of being a die-hard aggressive researcher with all the high-tech equipment and never having any visuals or interactions. Well, there was a group of people out there in the Bigfoot world who were suggesting habituation.
Popularized by primatologist Jane Goodall, habituation is a method of study that involves acclimating the animals to a human presence.
You know, go out and do the Dr. Jane Goodall thing, hanging out with the chimps, right? Well, I did that in this new area. It took them 5 years before they took food from my gifting bowls.
Dr. Johnson claims that this method enabled him to develop a close rapport with the mysterious creatures.
Yesterday morning, I knew I was gonna be leaving, to come here and film, and I had to pack up camp. And so I walked away to from the base camp to where the main bedding area is. And I stood on the flat area above where the main bedding area goes. It slopes, it's on the slope down the mountainside. And I stood about 70 feet back from the crest of where it slopes down. And I stood there for a good half hour. And I sang some songs, whistled a couple tunes, and just kind of stayed there. And then I heard crack, crunch, and Daddy walked up the hillside, came over the crest. He stood there. He looked at me. Then he looked down at my little dog on the ground. Then he looked back up at me. And then he turned around and walked back down the mountainside.
Whether credible or not, the many hypotheses and theories surrounding Bigfoot raise more questions than they answer. For some, the question to ask is not whether or not the witnesses saw something abnormal, but rather, what did they see?
Everybody loves a good myth, and especially myths that are the best myths and the best science fiction is always those stories that are just a half a step away from reality. The ones that are truly outrageous, those are really difficult to truly believe. You can't sink your thinking behind that because it's just too outrageous.
People love stories, and they love to believe in those stories. So I'm just kind of interested in the whole phenomenon, mostly about why people believe what they do. And in particular, this one, it seems to be so unbelievable to me. Carl Sagan said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and there is no evidence, but there are lots of extraordinary claims.
You know, the nature of human perception is so fluid that you have to question everything that people say. You know, you can't even get a straightforward answer about a crime or a car accident. You know, some people will say the guy had a red shirt on, some say he had a green shirt on, and memory is not reliable all the time. Nonetheless, I think you can still construct a possible creature out of these sightings. You have to be careful not to just be creating your own myth. You know, you're creating your own new legend. You want to be an honest investigator and hopefully not a deluded myth maker.
Myths and science fiction that's only a half a step from reality. It's like, okay, I can kind of get into that. And Bigfoot is the perfect myth. Because, yeah, at one time, there were many species of humans running around, and some of them were big and hairy and stood really tall. Gigantopithecus that's been found in Africa, you know, which presumably people think these things are, fits the mold, okay? So it's like, okay, well, this creature did exist in the past on the planet, so maybe they could still be here.
And so there is a lot of forest here that has been untouched. And so there's this idea that, well, if it's been unexplored, supposedly, that could be where Bigfoot is.
But the area is not empty of humans. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of logging roads. The forest here provides a continuous source of timber. There's a lot of people that make a living working in these mountains, working in these forests, and they're all over the place. And the roads go all over the place. And there's people out there all the time, and have been for a very long time.
I know there's a natural tendency that humans have to see these kinds of forms out in the woods, you know, boogeyman or whatever strange ghostly forms. We tend to see ourselves out in the woods, especially in the dark when we're scared at night, you know. That's a common thing that goes back to childhood and the monster under your bed or whatever.
Well, Bigfoot is a fun story. It's mysterious, and when you're out in the woods and it's dark and the stars are out and you're with your friends around the campfire and you start telling stories, you think, wow, how amazing would it be for there to be this creature out here around us? And people love that. You know, they love the legendary stories.
Anyone who works in the woods will always tell you that there's certain times, you know, that the hair on the back of your neck will stand up, that you think you see something out of the corner of your eye. And we're animals ourselves as much as people don't want to admit that. And so we have survival skills that are deep inside our psyches. It helped us survive all of these many hundreds of thousands of years. And so when you move around in the woods, of course, sometimes you're like, what was that? I heard something. Especially if you're not used to working in or living in this environment and you're visiting. You're already off balance. You are already not seeing the things that you're normally used to seeing. And so you don't know what the triggers are to keep yourself safe. And so your imagination will be really heightened to keep you safe. And so every little clue that happens out there, a snapping twig, a tree branch, you know, moving in the wind. And then, of course, the large animals that we do have living around here, the bears, the elk, the deer, they make sounds. All of that will contribute to the fact that, wow, maybe I saw something. And off your mind goes to the races, you know, and especially with this pervasive myth of this large, hairy animal, you know, stomping around out there. You're, well, maybe that was Bigfoot. So my coworkers and I have said, oh, yeah, that was a Bigfoot day. Yeah, definitely, you know, saw something out there.
Like Keith Benson, many people flatly refuse to believe that a half-man, half-ape creature could be lurking in the forests of the region, and the many hoaxes only hurt.
There have been a number of people who have created hoaxes that provided so-called evidence for Bigfoot. You know, the footsteps in the mud and sightings and the film of the guy in the monkey suit walking around.
It has been proven that some of the footprints were deliberately faked. Wilbur Wallace, the supervisor of the famous Bluff Creek site, fabricated the footprints found here, according to denunciations made by his nephew.
His form of tracks that he had made with these wooden footprint stompers started to appear, and they have a much different appearance. You know, they're more hourglass shaped, and they have strange, awkward appearance. Those started popping up all over the place, and a lot of these local construction workers and foresters, they like to play jokes on outsiders, you know, anyone out there in the bigger world. Well, it was very funny, I think, for them to get them to come all the way from Canada and look at fake footprints.
I think one of the aspects of the Bigfoot story is how many hoaxes there have been. And how easily it is to get Bigfoot believers to believe in the hoaxes.
Some of the tracks that you find just look ludicrous, ridiculous, and a lot of them are probably from bears or, you know, they're just strange shapes in the ground.
People have said they found prints, and it's been shown that they're bear prints. They're able to track it back to another animal, test the DNA, find out that it belongs to a different animal, one that we know existing.
I mean, you find other ones that, I mean, what can you make of them like this? This is claimed to be a juvenile Bigfoot track. A lot of people think, well, Bigfoot is so human that when they see human footprints in the mud, they think, well, this could be a Bigfoot track. And so then you get to the point where how do you know the difference at all, right? Anything that humans do could be claimed to be Bigfoot, you know. It's very problematic, especially when people really want badly to see Bigfoot or to prove Bigfoot. I think it lends towards the bending of evidence and interpreting things in favor of one's favorite hypothesis.
Keith Benson is a wildlife biologist with enormous experience dealing with rare animal species. If Bigfoot really inhabits the forests of Northern California, nobody is better placed than him to discover it.
These are presumably really large animals. So they're maybe 6, 7, 8 feet tall. If you figured out the weight, maybe 500, 600 pounds, really large animal. They should leave a really large impact on the environment that we can detect, where they're feeding, where they're bedding down, where they're, you know, wherever going through their daily lives. Either these things are super duper long-lived and they only mate every 100 years, or it's really unlikely that they could survive, or we're seeing the very last of them and they're about to go extinct. And then in my own profession, there's a number of endangered species that live in this area. And especially with the advent of new technology, we are detecting increasingly rare animals pretty easily. Even small carnivores that are only, a foot or two long, only weigh a few pounds, and there's less than 100 of these things. And we're able to detect them because we use photo traps and detection gear that allows us to find these extremely rare animals. In none of those surveys, of which there have been hundreds in this region, have we ever picked up a Bigfoot sighting in any of our studies. Never, never. And so it's like, if I can find an animal of which there's only less than 100, they are only a couple feet long, and they exist in this area of thousands of square miles, if I can find them, why can't I find an 8-foot-tall, 700-pound primate?
But despite all of the evidence, all of the proven hoaxes, vast numbers of people continue to believe, fueling the legend.
The more I look into it, the more convinced I become, or at least the more convinced I am that all of the theories of the hoax are wrong.
And you have to look at it, I think, as a broader picture. Almost everybody in every state in the Union has had an episode of one kind or another of Bigfoot.
The fellow who claims to be the man in the Bigfoot suit doesn't even know how to describe how to get to that film site, which is, like I said, some 60 miles off into the backwoods on rugged dirt roads. And his description of the area sounds more like 6 miles off the highway. It's not convincing.
There was no way that you could absolutely get in there, except like Patterson and Gimlin, who went in on horseback.
For others, the Patterson and Gimlin film has serious credibility issues, and no other image of Bigfoot has been captured since the day of that fateful shooting over 50 years ago.
In science, it'd be really hard to dispute a single data point. You can't. And all you can do is go, okay, well, you made an observation. Great. Let's go see if we can do that again, and again, and again, and again, and get a solid base of evidence to prove the existence of this animal. The ultimate problem with the film clip is, again, like I said, we haven't gotten other images in decade after decade of thousands and thousands of people running around out there trying to find more evidence of Bigfoot.
While many doubt the existence of Bigfoot, the believers have come to romanticize their faith, associating it with nature and freedom of spirit.
Bigfoot kind of represents the end of civilization too, the thing that exists outside of it and despite it and can never be found by it, right? So it's kind of appropriate to the Bigfoot legend out here too. All summer long, there's groups of people going back up in the woods back there looking for Bigfoot. Mostly just totally ordinary people. You would not know them from Adam or Eve or anybody, Joe Sixpack or whatever, They're usually married with kids and jobs. And most of these people that come out here on these expeditions, this is like their big adventure. It's a vacation. And they want to experience something different.
90% of the people, I would say, come and want to go to Bluff Creek where Patterson filmed. So starting in the beginning of May, when we have sunshine clear through summer, it's a steady procession up to Bluff Creek and to where Patterson filmed, or where they think Patterson filmed.
You know, through the years, we had people call up and say, we're coming from Ohio, and how big a bore of a rifle do I need to shoot this thing? How big is it? And so we've had every spectrum. I've had people visit. I had a young man and his wife come on their anniversary from Pennsylvania, where they had saved the money to come. He had a Bigfoot tattoo that went from his knee to the top of his hip, and he had thought about Bigfoot all his life from his youth and could hardly wait to get here and to go out to Bluff Creek and to explore that area and to look for Bigfoot.
While the real Bigfoot continues to elude his admirers, his image is everywhere in the village of Willow Creek, from storefronts to park entrances, and he is the reluctant star of annual festivals. Despite his shy nature, it has not prevented him from appearing on all kinds of merchandise.
The biggest festival or parade centered around Bigfoot would be the one in Willow Creek. It's Bigfoot Days. It just happened a few weeks ago for this year. And you have people dressing up as Bigfoot, and you have, I mean, half the town is dressed as Bigfoot.
Some of the parades will have a dozen Bigfoot marching in the parade, representing casinos and representing businesses, and representing bands. So Bigfoot has been quite a phenomenon in this community. I've twice been the Grand Marshal of Bigfoot Days parade, so I'm certainly a party to enjoying Bigfoot.
Bigfoot is a mascot for Willow Creek. If you go to the town, you'll see at least 3 or 4 large carved wooden statues of Bigfoot. There's a couple businesses named after Bigfoot. There's Bigfoot rafting. There's Bigfoot books, obviously. There are 4 or 5 big murals in town.
I think it's really fun to think that there's some big, hairy, human-like thing running around out there. I mean, what a wonderful story that is. And that, I know, makes people happy. It gives them joy that there's this mystery out there. Wow, there's this extraordinary other species of human wandering around out there. It gives people hope. It gives them happiness. It's a wonderful sense of mystery. That, you know, we haven't conquered every single square inch of the planet. There's still really wild, really weird things out there. All of that helps to propel the myth.
Well, because I've been in these woods for a good part of my life, and I hunt and I fish and I travel and I see all of the animals that are out in these woods. If there were a Bigfoot, this would be the place for him to be. He certainly could exist and live a rather carefree life without being inhibited by man, because this is an immense country, and it's a steep, rugged country, and for somebody that wants to hide out, this is the place to do it.
Far northwest reaches of the American continent, a massive gorilla-like biped.
You know, I was shocked for a minute that this is it an animal, or could I call it a person or whatever, that it disappeared in front of me.
Stalks the forest with slow, heavy strides. Locals call him Sasquatch. Canada's Yukon Territory, a wild land with some 484,000 square kilometers of forest, populated by 250,000 caribou and just 35,000 inhabitants. There are no skyscrapers and few highways here. Nature's vastness provides the only backdrop. Here, the great outdoors is a way of life. Yukoners never hesitate to wander in the forests. But some locals have heard strange noises. What they fear is Sasquatch, Bigfoot's Canadian cousin, a hairy monster of imposing proportions. On July 12, 2011, Ed Trichter had the surprise of his life.
Okay, let's go down here where it actually started. At the time when this happened, I lived up here, and I came down here quite slow, and I didn't pay much attention to anything till I got past this telephone pole here, and all of a sudden I see something walking there. And I came up beside it, and I said, that's a Sasquatch. Man walks like this, right? He walked like this. And he kept a good pace, you know. And I drove up, right up front, and I said, I'll wait till he comes around the telephone pole. And he was gone. I was, you know, just sort of looking. I said, what's going on? Never saw him again. Disappeared right there. It's a mystery to me. I sort of said, wow, I better not tell anybody about this. Because it was 2 years before I told my daughter. Because I didn't want to be called crazy. You never know.
His daughter, Rhonda, chose to believe her father. After all, up here, Sasquatch sightings are common.
We're just sitting there nonchalantly, and we're eating, and he's just like, oh yeah. You know, coming home one day, I seen there's Bigfoot. I'm like, huh? Where? And he said, well, down the hill. So, he showed me, but it was just like nothing, just blurted it out as we're eating. But then when we walked today, with the dip, it made it taller. Because when he said it to me, it didn't sound as tall. But then after we went and stood in the ditch, then it's like that would add about a foot. So that's pretty awesome. You know, be neat to see.
Rhonda insisted that her father share his secret.
Well, I knew Red is doing Bigfoot and stories and that, so I thought, I've got to tell Red. So I told Red. Red wanted to know if he could get hold of Dad and talk to him. I said, I'll ask Dad, and I told Dad that Red wanted to talk to him, and he was agreeable. So, and then that's how it all started.
The Sasquatch expert she's referring to is Red Grossinger, a veteran of the Canadian Army who has been passionate about the Sasquatch since 2003. He has published a book, The Sasquatch Research Manual, and spends much of his free time tracking the monster.
Through my years visiting around the Yukon, people have told me stories. So since 2003, I've been really digging into the history of Sasquatch.
He was sort of, and he's going like this. That was fascinated me, you know.
Red has had dozens of meetings just like this one in recent years. They all have one thing in common. Witnesses are reluctant to go public.
He had always kept that story secret. He might have told something partly to some people which thought that he was only joking. You know, just recently he came out with it.
Rhonda always says, carry the camera, you see.
Well, I ordered a couple of gold. He's, I believe he's German descent. He's a white person. And I found a lot of time the white folks are not quite as open to deal with the Sasquatch. For them, it takes a while to understand it more. So. Something I ordered something.
That's good.
It was just a few kilometers from Whitehorse that Ed saw the monster. With 28,000 inhabitants, it is the largest city in the Yukon. Of course, Sasquatches are not an everyday sight. Even here, nature is not far away. Whitehorse is the last trace of civilization before the terrain gives way to endless, unspoiled forest. And the man who directs Whitehorse's affairs is particularly proud of his city.
Hi, my name is Dan Curtis. I'm the mayor of the city of Whitehorse, Yukon. I was born right over there in that hospital, right across the river. So we're a few meters away from my birthplace. Yeah, it's good. It's been great. I love the Yukon. I think we all do. I think the thing that makes this so special is the people. The people are fantastic here. Many places in Canada and the world, I think you have to be from there and live there for your whole life, for generations, to be really accepted. But here, it accepts you and you choose it, and it chooses you. So, and tourism is a huge component for us as well. It's the largest employer outside of government. One of the things I'm not so proud of is our traffic. Rarely do they stop in time. So you're really taking your life in your own hands when you're traveling on our streets.
What distinguishes Whitehorse from other cities north of the 60th parallel is its monster, of course.
The Sasquatch, quite a bit actually. It's been quite a legend within our First Nations for many, many years. It's something to be pretty cool if they did find one, but we do have so much density within the Yukon. There's areas that very few people get to. So it's quite feasible that if one exists, it could very well be within the borders of Yukon. And I think for the people I've talked to and the sightings I've heard about, this is the place.
Up here, everyone has their own Sasquatch story.
I think a lot of people would have more of a fear surrounding it, for sure. Like it's like some kind of a predator, right?
It sounded big, like a big, something bigger than a wolf or a dog, or it was like nothing I'd ever heard in my life before.
Nothing predestined Red Grossinger to a life of Sasquatch obsession. This retired military man's passion developed after an extraordinary experience.
I was out fishing with a friend of mine on Frenchman Lake, which is about central Yukon. And we were enjoying fun, nice sunny day, no wind at all. We were in a small bay and all of a sudden came a strong smell. Something I've never ever smelled in my life. To me, it was something that smelled like a mix of dirty baby diapers with dog manure and pig manure. And if you mix them together, it would come up with that stink. And something that burned my eyes, actually. I mean, I was crying, it burned so much. And there were no birds chirping around at all. No squirrels running. It was like in a dead zone. Now, being a bit curious, I decided to find out what it would be. So that got me going, and since that day, I've been doing research.
The Sasquatch is a biped standing 8 feet tall, its body completely covered with long black hair. Its feet measure some 24 inches. This colossus burns 7,000 calories a day to survive and is said to be lonely but fearful of humans. It is heard in the forest by a loud, ear-piercing screech.
The nose could almost be described as a nose of a fighter, where it's fairly wide, and on the male, genitalia are not quite visible because of the hair again, but the breasts of the females are very visible. Somewhere here, there we go. Notice the torso is so big as well. And the head is fairly small as compared to the rest of the body. I have a footprint here of a Sasquatch. And that you cannot be mistaken for anything but a Sasquatch.
Christopher Reynolds is a journalist for the Whitehorse Daily Star, which was founded in 1900, making it the oldest daily paper in the Yukon. Chris was born in Toronto, but he has made the Yukon his new home.
The Sasquatch, it's sort of this mythic specter, or not necessarily mythic, lingering in the collective consciousness, you could say, of the North.
Let's see here. What do we got here? Here we go.
I think when Red Grossinger arrived in the Yukon, he revived an interest that had only been vague and not really officialized in, say, newspaper pages.
These red dots are where Sasquatch had been either observed or there was footprints.
And the fact that he was involved with this Canadian Sasquatch Research Organization lent, in some folks' eyes, a measure of credibility.
In 1967, 2 California filmmakers captured on film what they believed to be a Bigfoot. Despite having its validity challenged by scientists, the footage sparked a storm of interest. From the Yukon to Northern California, budding cryptozoologists emerged with an interest in large, hairy bipeds.
That film has been analyzed and analyzed over and over again, where people first thought it was somebody in a monkey suit or something, but the analysis of that can all confirm that it is an actual creature, an actual Sasquatch. So that was one of the first film ever taken of a Sasquatch that has been proven to be true.
But one event revived Sasquatch fever in the region.
In 2005, a man from Teslin came across a footprint in the mud outside of this small community south of Whitehorse, and soon after, a tuft of hair was located. And there was great suspicion that this may be evidence of a Sasquatch. This footprint was not normal. It didn't match up to any other creatures in the area. And I think there have been rumors circulating around the communities as well up until that point. When this was reported to several news organizations, the CBC, the Whitehorse Star, and a little later, the Yukon News, all reported on this discovery.
At the time, Philip Merchant worked for the Yukon government. It was he who took charge of the investigation.
Well, the first I heard of it was from a conservation officer who was in Teslin, who was asked to come and have a look at some samples and some tracks also. He took a bunch of photographs of the tracks. He collected this sample and that somebody had found at the site. It came to me in the lab. We had, our lab has done a bunch of hair work, investigative work around kill sites to try and identify predators and that kind of thing. So we'd done quite a lot of hair work on wolves, on bears, lynx, various predators. So we knew a bit about hair. You know, certainly all the scientific literature was available to us. When the event was published in the newspaper, I believe Dave Coltman, the University of Alberta, saw a copy or heard of it on CBC or maybe online, I'm not sure. And he contacted us and said, hey, you know, send us a sample of this and we'll run it and see what it comes up with as far as DNA. As he offered, I thought, oh, sure, let's take it to the next step. These are the pages out of the scrapbook that some folks put together for me when I retired, and oddly enough, out of 30 years of working with mammals, the Sasquatch makes it into my scrapbook.
I didn't realize that the incident in Yukon actually prompted a scientific investigation beyond just a simple DNA sample. There was actually a paper written on it. Well, the paper is just a description of the DNA analysis for DNA molecular geneticists who understand this stuff. You know, most of this is a fairly complex description, and there out there on the limb is the sample from the Sasquatch.
David Thompson is a fiction writer living in Whitehorse. He's had a lifelong passion for the history and culture of Yukon, which has served as inspiration for his novels. For him, the Yukon is the final frontier, the land of endless possibilities. No wonder the Sasquatch legend has captured the imagination of locals.
The main attraction to the Yukon, I think, in the past has been the search for gold. You know, up to about 1850, there was a lot of prospectors in the territory, searching all over, not finding great amounts of gold, but finding promising samples that kept them here. And that contributed a lot to the development of the territory. The fur traders, they were big. You know, the Hudson's Bay Company and the gold miners, as mentioned, and the clergy also came in.
The only major development the area has known was a highway linking it to the south, a link that put an end to the region's once total isolation.
Up to then, it was villages. Whitehorse was a very small town. They built all kinds of buildings for the Army. The Army was in control of the highway. They built headquarters here in Whitehorse at Camp Dakini. And it was, I think it's probably a shock to a lot of people who had lived for so long, a village life, really. And I could remember people saying, you know, how it kind of affected them. It was kind of a stressful time, I would think.
Long before the media took an interest in Bigfoot and Sasquatch, Native American tribes incorporated hairy, bipedal, half-human, half-animal creatures into their legends. Moreover, the word Sasquatch originated in languages spoken by the First Nations in northern British Columbia and southern Yukon.
I am Tlingit, yeah, from Teslin area. I grew up there. My people have always believed in these beings, and I remember as a child growing up, my mom and my grandmas, to keep me quiet, because we lived out on the land, to keep kids quiet, they'd always say, be quiet, you know, the bushman will get you. That's what they referred to him as.
So I know that I've heard stories being born and raised here. I can remember when I was a kid hearing stories of a Sasquatch from First Nation elders, as well as people that were working on the SS Klondike, picking up firewood along the way. They've seen animals that they were quite certain weren't black bear or grizzly bear, and they're quite convinced that it was a Sasquatch.
My husband and I went salmon fishing, netting salmon. This is years back now. We were at our fish camp, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, we heard this god-awful yell. Something I can't describe, but it was so, so loud. And we were all in tents, and everybody, I swear to God, lifted out of their beds, ran out and said, what was that? And I looked around, and there's all my cousins. They're outside their tents. What is that? It was so loud. I mean, everybody woke up and were on their feet, like, what is that? And to this day, like, I've never heard anything like that. Somebody was saying, well, was it a bear? No, I know what a bear sounds like. I know the growls, I know those sounds, you know, but I don't know.
I always look for them, because we've had lots of sightings here, like in the Yukon. Other people had seen them, and you know. So I'd love to see one. I'm always on the outlook for something good and interesting. Oh, I just probably grab my camera and start taking pictures or chase it or something, you know. I take a picture too, you know.
He had a good stride on him and never looked sideways. That was so strange also. Was it just a dream while I was driving, you know, but it wasn't.
It is north of Whitehorse, 100 kilometers or 62 miles from the capital, that Red Grossinger focuses his efforts to catch the Sasquatch.
So this is it we have right here. We'll take this road along the river, around Long Lake, and we'll go all the way up and then we'll turn right. Now there may be a couple of water puddles here, so we have to be careful once we get on that secondary trail. Anyway, so we'll take you guys there for a few minutes and see what's happening. Put it this way, I haven't seen one anywhere around here yet. That'd be nice to see one. So, hey, who knows? Who knows? because there's been sighting everywhere. So
It is estimated that over 75% of the region is untouched by human activity. The boreal forest, home of the sasquatch, is composed almost entirely of black and white spruce. Up here, the average summer temperature is 11 degrees Celsius or 51 degrees Fahrenheit.
okay, let's get at it then.
I'm not an outdoor person, not like it. We go camping, but I prefer a trailer and the convenience.
If we're not back within 3 days, Marie, we're stuck somewhere. Oh, we got phone. Oh yeah, we got phone nowadays. There we are. So we'll jump in the truck.
Well, I look at a few of his things. I read his book.
Oh, I got a light Sasquatch research kit. GPS, they important because it show you where we see something. Camera, VCR, that kind of stuff. I got night visions and trail camera as well. Never know.
I have to see one.
A bit of sightseeing, so we'll take over the road. I try to go out as often as possible, checking different places where there has been other sighting or reports.
I think folks up here, as in many small communities, smaller communities are more laid back. I think folks are a lot more in touch with nature. That's a bit of a cliche, but it's so true in very remote places like the Yukon and I think Northwest Territories and Nunavut, where there's not a lot of urban sprawl at all. When you're outside of small urban centers, all you have are the trees or, depending on how north you are, how far north, the tundra. So there is a real engagement with the wilderness surrounding you. Hunting licenses and permits are incredibly cheap up here. It's not uncommon to come across people with trap lines nearby or to have fed themselves 25% on moose stored in their deep freeze for the winter. So there is an engagement with nature and a laid-back attitude, I would say.
What evidence does Red Grossinger look for in the forest? Broken tree trunks, which he says can only be the work of the Sasquatch.
Now this tree was broken probably a little while back. This tree sap here that's almost dry, yeah. And it would probably be broken coming down this way, yet it has been moved over there. But there's nothing here that the wind would have caught. And this is well protected, so how did that happen? A human being had to be awfully strong to grab a tree like that and break it. I know I can't. Now, if Sasquatch was to break that, would I put a hand somewhere here, like that? That's 5 feet, yeah. So I'll venture a little way here and see if there's anything else. I'm against shooting it now. In order to have absolute proof, the scientists would require a dead body. Now, if you happen to shoot one and find a dead one, remove the head. Take the head with you at least. Nothing else, take the head.
Most Sasquatch witnesses are struck by its deafening cry. So Red Grossinger has perfected his own Sasquatch call to attract the monster.
Sometimes we call them to see if they would respond, but usually that takes a little while.
Will the Sasquatch answer Grossinger's call?
No, nothing. Oh, that could only respond quite a bit later. It has different sounds. Some of the sound is like go whoop. Some of the sound is whoop. It all depends. It's if a person was able to do an interpretation of each type of call, then be able to understand something better. For example, coyote have an ability to have different sounds, and even for a small animal, it still can really have a very loud voice. So a lot of people mistake coyote for that.
But where could the Sasquatch have come from? Grant Zazula is a paleontologist working for the Yukon government. He specializes in the study of fossilized remains.
Well, a paleontologist is a person that studies ancient life, plants and animals of the past. And in the Yukon, we have a very impressive record of Ice Age mammals that are preserved in the frozen permafrost of the Yukon. So the paleontology program works to go and collect Ice Age fossils of mammoths and short-faced bears and Ice Age lions and animals such as this, and we do research and try to educate the public on these sort of topics. Well, the Yukon Beringia Interpretive Center was built in 1996, and it's basically a facility to tell the story of Beringia, which is the Ice Age landscape which connected Asia with North America during the Ice Age. And it was also the landscape of the first people who lived in North America used to migrate from Asia into this continent. So Beringia is a pretty important place scientifically, for sure.
Could the Sasquatch have miraculously survived the Ice Age? Red Grossinger explains the theory first developed by the American anthropologist Grover Krantz. If so, the Sasquatch's most likely ancestor would be the Gigantopithecus, a giant gorilla thought to have been extinct for 100,000 years.
This guy here, Grover Krantz, he was a professor at the University of Wisconsin. And this is what he made of Gigantopithecus right here. So that is what he believes, and many people believe, the ancestor of the North American Sasquatch. And basically they came here during what has been called the last Ice Age. So they were First Nation coming in, animals, everything from Asia came across. And the theory is, and I believe in that, is that Gigantopithecus came across as well.
Around 13 or 14,000 years ago, global climates start to warm up substantially, and glaciers on the continents melt, sea level starts to rise, and this grassland, the steppe tundra grassland, starts to become transformed back into a boreal forest like we have today. And that time also was an important time because of the extinctions of a lot of these Ice Age mammals. So woolly mammoths on the continent go extinct. Ice Age horses in North America go extinct. And a lot of the predators like lions and scimitar cats go extinct as well. So it's a major upheaval, a lot of transition happening, and it was a real period of environmental change and biogeographic change.
Can the Sasquatch be the lone exception to the rule, a creature that cheated death, surviving through all of the Earth's climatic changes?
When you study fossils, there's not really much connection to fossils and Sasquatch. It's not a very relevant connection anyways, you know, people talk about Sasquatch and these types of animals, and it's more of, in my understanding, a joking sort of way, but the idea is lacking evidence for sure.
An opinion shared by the author David Thompson.
Placer miners have dug up hundreds of miles of creeks. They've knocked tops off mountains, looking for gold, finding the gold. They've tunneled down 40 feet into the permafrost. They've tunneled, they've dug it up, and they've brought up all kinds of bones. They even found a 700,000-year-old horse preserved in permafrost, and it was flesh and bone and skin. It had a white mane and a white tail, and they dug that up. And not once has anybody ever brought up anything that resembles a Sasquatch.
But the Sasquatch has all the necessary skills to survive through the ages, argues Red Grossinger. He even believes it would have possessed a superior intellect. The proof? The Sasquatch has developed its own system of communication using wooden sticks. Amazing.
Yeah, what I could do is go back to the truck and grab my stick and do a couple of bang and see what happened. Who knows? Who knows? I'll try that one there, see what happened. So much for that stick. No response anywhere.
But in a time when each of us walks around with cameras built into our smartphones, it seems surprising that no one has managed to take a photograph of the monster.
If you have a camera and have enough calm to take a photo, take a photo. Simple as that, and try to realize and try to take notes in order to describe what you've seen. But you find that 99% of the people are so in shock, they don't think about it. There's many reports people said, you know, there it was, right there. A lot of people travel with camera and they're too amazed to look at it.
Whether flesh and blood monster or pure legend, the Sasquatch has certainly left its mark on popular culture in the Yukon.
Absolutely, people believe in it. The Sasquatch doesn't come up necessarily in daily conversation, but you will have things like a band referencing the mythology of the North called Sasquatch Prom Date, a great rockabilly band, by the way. Things like in our paper, even every day, there's basically the Sasquatch hotline, although the hotline is actually an email calling out for folks who have witnessed either the Sasquatch, him or herself, or signs of that great hominid.
These are men and women like Red Grossinger, firm believers in the myth. For this veteran of the Army, there is no question of abandoning the search.
So that's pretty high up. The two first three, I would say those were from Sasquatch, simply because of the height and the location. Some of the others in the back, they probably would be wind blow or natural broken.
I have to admit that I don't believe in a creature known as the Sasquatch or Bigfoot. It's viewed with skepticism in the journalistic community. In fact, so much so that among journalists, it probably comes up a lot less than, say, zoning changes or parking bylaws and stimulating seizing issues of that nature. But not so much so that it doesn't come up in the newspaper or on CBC News once in a while.
For paleontologist Grant Zazula, the Sasquatch is a myth.
Well, of course, there's always a possibility of anything until it's proven or disproven or evidence is presented. And you know, as far as I know, there's no real evidence for any Sasquatches that live in the Yukon or even that were here during the Ice Age. The only evidence for any large hominid during the Ice Age in North America are people, just like you and I. They were built very much the same as us. They weren't 9 feet tall and, you know, big and shaggy. There's no evidence for that at all. And the only evidence, as far as I know, for any kind of Sasquatch is, you know, circumstantial testimonies by people who saw something in the wilderness, right? And the only credible scientific study that's ever been done on these reported Sasquatch hairs that have been found all over the world, quite recently was published and demonstrated, of course, that all those hairs were just animals that we know of today, wolves and bears and other things like that. None of it was actually Sasquatch or related to, you know, early non-human primates or something like that. So, of course, the evidence is lacking for Sasquatch, but people still find it quite fun, I guess, to go and look for them.
This is the same conclusion reached by Philip Merchant, retired scientist for the Yukon government. The DNA tests proved beyond doubt that the hairs found in Teslin in 2005 were not those of a Sasquatch.
Somebody contacted me and wanted some of the hair for a Sasquatch museum, and I said, no, you can get some bison hair closer to home. We don't need to be sending you bison hair from the government of the Yukon.
And of course, there's that so-called bison hair out of Teslin, which makes me laugh every time someone tells me that no Sasquatch, only bison. Well, the two have nothing related to it, because the people that seen that, they've talking to the media, obviously. But I've talked with them, and for them, there's no arguments whatsoever. That stupid piece of turf hair from bison was someone that killed the bison and threw the bloody thing away. It had nothing to do with it.
There's people in the Yukon that believe that they are Elvis, so you can mix them up in the same lot of individuals that believe in Sasquatch too, and there's colorful and creative people in the Yukon, which makes it an interesting place to live, right? So all the power to them. But in terms of being a scientist and trying to relay scientific information to the public, there's absolutely no evidence and very, very, very limited possibility that any Sasquatches could be here.
I would have to say that I was pretty convinced that hair was what I thought it was, and that was bison based on the texture, the smell, and everything else. The chances of a creature like that living in the Yukon are remote in the extreme, undetected. There's been people here for a long time. When you get 9 people who have seen something, if you don't follow up, then people start asking, well, why didn't you follow up? So to some degree, it's as much showing that it isn't as showing that it is.
And of course, the so-called scientific people take that as an excuse. To me, that's all it is, a bloody excuse.
For author David Thompson, the Sasquatch is a fictional character, but one with huge importance for the Yukon.
Well, I make my Sasquatches, they're compassionate, they're intelligent, they're companions to humans who they trust. They're smart, they have a language. The language is a series of whistles. That's why dogs like them, because they can have that silent whistle. And if you're ever camping and your dog runs off in the bush, it might be a Sasquatch calling them and throwing a stick for them. But they're just really good characters to write about.
He recently wrote a new piece on the monster for a local newspaper.
Okay, this is the What's Up Yukon. It's an artsy paper. So they had a contest, and the contest was that Condor Air would fly you to Frankfurt from Whitehorse if you could write a 500-word story telling them who you would take with you. So I said, if I won the trip for 2 to Frankfurt, I would take the Sasquatch that lives in the forest behind my house with me. See, the Sasquatch that lives in the forest behind my house is called Flunder. And he was a good friend, and he wanted to visit the Teutoburg forests in Germany to see if he has any relatives there. So I didn't win, but I did get my story written to the paper, and I hope people enjoyed it.
I've never actually saw one myself. Well, there is people that come in here looking for books and such, any sort of literature on Sasquatches. Just because it's in the Yukon, it's the magic and the mystery. People have seen and done things that other people haven't, and so there's always that, that desire to go out and do something that other people haven't seen or done. So, yeah. I wouldn't say that I don't believe them. Same with UFOs. I wouldn't say that I'm not a believer of them, but I go on the premise that till I actually see them, then I make physical eye contact with it, then I would say then I'm a 100% believer. Right now, I'm right on the fence.
The region's natural beauty has made it a draw for tourists, but the Sasquatch still arouses curiosity and amazement.
I don't know much of anything, and I do not believe that there is such a thing.
Well, I've seen pictures of what they think it looks like. It's supposed to be a upright, standing monster of a bear or a long-haired monster, I guess. I don't know. Big, but I've never seen one, and I don't think there are any either.
To the First Nations, who represent 23% of the population of the Yukon, the Sasquatch deserves our respect.
Now, I know my people believe that these beings have, I'm not sure how to describe this, but I'm going to say supernatural powers. They can disappear, they can appear, they can disappear. And my people tell me, my elders tell me that I need to be respectful of these beings at all times.
People keep looking for them.
Good luck. Keep looking. Send me email if you find one, will you?
I have yet to see the Sasquatch myself, but I know that we do have a burger named the Sasquatch, and there is quite a few art depictions of the Sasquatch as to what people think this mythic creature looks like.
I didn't see enough of him. You know, I mean, to see a creature like that is something else. Yeah, I wish I could see one again.
Well, if they're not reproducing and they're not mating and having babies, it's hard to keep a population going. There's not a lot of animals that survive, have a lifespan of 300 years. It's quite fantastic. I think there's actually one of them in my Dungeons and Dragons monster manual, but I don't, that's a different ballgame.
But obviously they exist. They're there. They may be well looking at us right now. We won't see them, but who knows? One of these days.
On Honey Island in Louisiana, a creature terrorizes the curious few who dare to venture into its habitat.
Every time I go out in the swamp, I'm going to look around because, I'm always aware that at any minute this thing could show up. You hear that?
And my very first impression was, what in the hell is that?
Beware of the Honey Island swamp monster. Louisiana is jazz, festivals, Cajun culture, and of course the charming New Orleans. And the Big Easy is surrounded by exceptional landscapes. The arms of the Mississippi create a vast labyrinth of swamps before draining into the sea. These bayous, sparsely populated and often inaccessible by car, inspire awe and a sense of mystery. The Honey Island Bayou is one of the best preserved in Louisiana. It's so inhospitable that even experienced hunters often refuse to return. In these ancient bayous, it's not only the known predators that you have to worry about. There's also a monster. In 1963, Harlan Ford was in this area to hunt. But on a night when the moon was dim, a different predator was waiting for him. His granddaughter Dana Holyfield shares his story with us.
We were walking fast with a heavy load when we saw the hindquarters of what appeared to be a large animal standing on all fours in the trail. But as we approached within 20 feet, Bill exclaimed in a loud voice, "What the hell is that thing?" The creature had evidently failed to hear us approaching up the trail, but at the loud sound of Bill's voice, it swung around and faced us. This thing glared at us for a ferocious manner for only a split second, then raised up and ran on its hind legs, disappearing over a mound of briars and brush. This was the letter that I found in my grandfather's when my mom sold his house after my grandmother passed away. And we found the letter, I guess it was in 1974, and it sort of explains in detail his actual experiences. He had told me when I was a child, never, his friends and family, but over the years things get exaggerated, and people tell a story, and then by the time it gets around the table, it's changed. So when I found this and it documented his what he said, then it's like, we know the truth, like what really happened.
Until his death in 1980, Harlan Ford never stopped looking for the creature he saw in the bayous of Honey Island, located a stone's throw from the small and quiet city of Slidell. Ariolia Vanni is the historian of record in Slidell. She has just written an essay on the history of the city.
Slidell is located 3 miles from north of Lake Pontchartrain. We're 30 miles from downtown New Orleans. We are in the ozone belt. I mean, the mayor always says we're the best kept secret on the North Shore, and we really are. The area is just a mystery. Nobody really wants to go digging around in the swamp with alligators and the snakes and things like that. It's beautiful. If you like to take pictures, it's a great place to go. And then maybe you might get a picture of some strange animal.
It's in Pearl River, a small town of 2,000 people, that the monster has most often been sighted.
That's the home of the Honey Island Swamp, which is the foot of it. And that's our West Pearl River.
James Leving is the mayor of this city on the shores of the bayou.
Yes, it's the talk of the town. Sure is. They've seen him, they've heard about him, and it's just, I guess for sure he's for real,
We are in the middle of Honey Island Swamp. It borders the Mississippi and Louisiana, and this Pearl River that we're on right now is what divides us. And this is a very big swamp. It's one of the most primitive swamps in America.
Our people and a lot of people all around the country, they come in here and hunt, do a lot of fishing, a lot of sightseeing now with the boat tours and stuff, with the alligators. It's a beautiful swamp. A little bedroom community. Everybody knows everybody. We clean. It's home to everybody.
The island that we're on here is called Goat Island. This is where our camp is. And further up is where my grandfather first encountered the Honey Island Swamp Monster.
The monster described in Harlan Ford's memoirs is terrifying.
Its loins were slender, while the chest and shoulders were tremendous. The head and face had a square appearance, and the entire body was covered with short, dingy gray hair. The head had long, wild hair that almost touched the ground. Some of the footprints are over 10 inches long with reptile-like claws and toes, while the heel and arm are characteristics of the big ape family.
In 1974, Harlan Ford discovered footprints he believed belonged to the monster of the bayou. His story spread across the region.
In 1974, that's when they found this dead hog that had its throat ripped out. Flies were swarming. They kept going a little ways. They was wondering what would kill a hog up in the woods like this and just leave it there to rot. And that's when he saw tracks. Well, he went back later with plaster Paris and made plaster Paris tracks.
Researchers from the Louisiana Wildlife and Fish Commission analyzed the imprints and could not link them to any known animal, which fueled rumors that a monster lives in Honey Island's bayous. Moreover, Dana describes her grandfather as a down-to-earth man. A former air traffic controller and an experienced hunter, he knew how to keep his cool and was not one to fantasize.
And he also was a musician, and he had a lot of friends in high places, as you could say. So it's like he was maybe putting his reputation on the line by coming out and saying this, because, you know, he used to fly his plane to the governor's mansion and play music for, you know, he'd get all his music friends to go over there. You know, and he knew a lot of people, so to come out with a story like that, I guess he chanced it, and he didn't really care because he knew what he had seen. He said, I don't care if they believe me or not, I know what I saw. I just knew he was just very serious on finding out more about it, and I felt like after he passed away, I had to carry on what he was doing. I wanted to find out.
For Dana, there's no doubting the existence of the Bayou Monster. She herself has seen it, as have neighbors and members of her family. This is the case for David Shute, who lives on Pearl River.
I enjoy it. That's part of living in Louisiana here, you know. You're surrounded by nature and it provides for you. That's a beautiful thing. Come on, girl. It had gotten dark in the evening. I had a little fire going just for light. And we had been walking down the bank, messing with the frogs, and we come back by my boat, and we set our gear down, and we're headed back up towards the tent. And got back just about to the tent, kind of by the fire, and then something ran out from behind the tent. And when I say something ran out, it ran out. I mean, it was moving. It took off from behind the tent, and it leapt and dove into the water. I don't know a creature that can do that. First thing I did when it happened, I ran back to my boat. I got my Q-beam on it, and I shined over there. Its head wasn't above water. I don't know any animal in this swamp that swims with its head below water. None. And I was fairly nervous the rest of the evening. I didn't leave my gun from my side after that because I didn't know if it was coming back.
The last recorded sighting was by Deborah Chester in August 2013, while she was visiting her mother near Pearl River.
And I went down the hill into an old creek bed, and had come up at the top of the hill, and my phone had went off, and I kind of glanced down to see what was on the phone. When I looked up, I saw this thing crossing the road. And my very first impression was, what in the hell is that? And it was walking with his arms swinging, its arms like this, and the hair was hanging down, long, matted, you know, like a horse's tail. It hadn't been brushed, you know, matted. It was reddish brown, not black, and it jumped a fence. So I stopped the car, like a crazy person, and ran up to the gate, and I stood on the bottom rung of the gate trying to see it. And I could hear it crashing through the woods, and I was leaning to the left and right trying to see if I could see this thing. Still didn't know what I had saw, and the smell hit me. And I remember looking down at the ground, both sides, thinking like this, thinking there's a dead animal here. You know, like roadkill. No, see, I've been a nurse for 25 years. I have smelled some stuff. I've smelled some bad stuff in my life, in my career, I should say. This was not something I had smelled before. This was not nice. It scared me because the hair went up on the back of my neck thinking this thing was out there probably looking at me.
I don't know. I would think if there's something out there, he's living off the animals around him because the swamp is plentiful. There's food everywhere. But then again, maybe if you're tired of eating the same old thing, maybe some new smell interests you. I don't know.
And I've told a few people You know, that's the main thing. People need to know this thing is out there, and it's real. And no one's going to convince me otherwise, because I know what I saw. I don't know what they are, but I'm convinced there's something there.
I seen something out there in them woods. If you want to call it a monster, I guess we can call it a monster.
I definitely believed him. Just, you could see it in his face that he knew it. He had saw something.
You know, you got to understand, I was born and raised in these woods, right around the corner, not 100 feet from where I saw this thing. That's where I grew up my whole life. I know all the animals in the woods. This was not something I've ever seen before. This was something, I don't know what it is.
It was the Cajuns, the descendants of the Acadians from Nova Scotia, who first settled in the bayous in the late 18th century. They built houses on stilts and subsisted on shrimp and crayfish. Even today, time seems to stand still in these swampy areas.
It's been a relatively untouched area for most of the history of Louisiana.
The Honey Island swamps cover 280 square kilometers, or 108 square miles, 2.5% of which are protected by the U.S. government.
And most of the people have not lived in the bottomland areas that would constitute the swamp as we would think of it. They mostly live up on the ridges around the swampy area, but it's not an area that has a big population.
This territory remains relatively unexplored, a fact that adds to its mystery. Monster or no monster, here, nature can kill you.
Because there's woods, you know, there's the road, and then there's nothing behind it but woods. Like, as far back as you can go, there's woods and swamp.
The Honey Island Swamp, we have all kinds of wildlife here. We have, of course, alligators, and we have, they say black panther are out here.
You always hear strange sounds. You didn't know what it was, you know. Sometimes you don't want to know what it is at nighttime. You just want to get in your house where you feel safe, exactly. Lock the door and where you feel safe.
Okay, guys, we're going to put on some Cajun air conditioning. Hang on here. We're going to get up ahead. Be prepared. I don't want you to get tossed over, so hang on.
John Royer organizes cruises through the bayous.
See that sound I'm making? So like the sound of a baby alligator. Alligators, large alligators, are territorial and they're cannibals. You make a sound like that, they think it's a baby. They'll come out looking to eat the baby.
For him, the existence of a monster in this inhospitable region is hardly surprising.
All the captains out here, I mean, occasionally we hear things out here. You know, you get to know everything out here, and occasionally you hear something out here and you don't know what it is, and you don't really want to find out either. You know, it's entirely possible. This swamp covers an area of over 250 square miles. Most of it's uninhabited, wildlife, and there's plenty of food sources in here. See, this one's bigger. It's a big old boy.
Whoa.
This thing apparently moves through the swamp and occasionally moves on the fringes. People occasionally that live on the edge of the swamp, some people claim to make contact with this thing, see it moving through the trees or moving on the edge of the water, or even wading through the water.
The most striking evidence comes from Ted Williams, a trapper who disappeared in the bayou.
Other people, there's been a few other eyewitnesses. This man, Old Man Williams, he was an old trapper, had seen it too.
The Holyfield brothers knew the mysterious Ted Williams.
Oh, Mr. Shawnee used to tell a tale about him being in the swamp fishing. Said it was just at daylight one morning, he was running his lines. Just before day, he had to be out and go to work. Said he had a big fish on the line, he'd pull it up, it'd bump. He'd feel it hang, you know, bump, he'd hang. Said he fooled with him there for about 15 minutes. He'd pull him up and boom, and shine that light over. He could see his eye, but he couldn't never get the fish to come on up. So he fooled around. He said, well, I'll work him around to the other side of the boat and see if I can get him out behind that limb. Said he leaned over there and looked, and there was that fish's other eye. He was hitting the bottom of the boat, the reason he couldn't come up. You'd had to know Mr. Shawnee to appreciate it.
I know Ted Williams, too.
Yeah.
So my grandfather had to go meet with Old Man Williams, and him and my grandmother, she told me they went out there to see him, and he said, he's like, yeah, I see it all the time. He said, but it ain't just one. He said, I see them swimming in pairs, and they go across the river, and he said, I don't bother them, and they don't bother me. One time, he was so close, they got out, and they shook off their hair, and he was close enough, it wet him. And then they just went on into the woods. But then Old Man Williams come up missing one day, and they never found him. They found his boat, but they didn't find him. And some people say he just got too close, you know, but they never found his body.
Several hypotheses have developed to explain the origin of the monster. In one, a train carrying a traveling circus derailed in 1920, releasing chimpanzees into the bayou. And the monster is a cross between a chimpanzee and an alligator.
And that's funny, because you go up in country a little bit, and the Crawfords and Singletaries and all that, and their ancestors will tell you literally, I shot something in this tree, I thought it was a squirrel, and out fell a monkey, you know? So, I mean, that did happen. But what exactly is out there? I don't know. I'd like to know. I'd like to know.
Another hypothesis is that the monster could be linked with NASA's Stennis Space Center, located 43 kilometers or 27 miles from Slidell.
Not too far from here, if you cross through that swamp, they have the government Stennis test site. Who knows what they make over there? Maybe something got out. They crossbred something. I mean, I hear stories that they're crossbreeding, like man and ape. I mean, I've heard that. Maybe something like that got out. You know, I don't know, but, or maybe it's an alien, I don't know. It's just something that just can't go walking around in town. I mean, it stays very well camouflaged in the swamp. There's so many places in the swamp it can hide.
You know, in a way I am. I'm always, particularly when I go through areas where there's exposed mud, I'm always looking for tracks and things like that. But I imagine I think they're probably more active, you know, at night or in the more remote areas of the swamp than they are around on the edges here. But yeah, I'd kind of like to think that occasionally I might spot something moving through the trees there.
After the death of Harland Ford in 1980, his wife Yvonne found several rolls of film in a box. One was marked Honey Swamp Monster. These are the images Dana used for a documentary she made on the monster in 2007.
Though there has been much controversy about the existence of this Louisiana honey-owned swamp monster, I managed to locate several new eyewitnesses who had more recent sightings since Ford and Mills first saw this creature in 1963. Whenever I was doing the documentary film, my grandmother, Yvonne Ford, who was married to Harlan, came out and said, I don't know if you could use this, but he's had this film. I found it in his belongings after he died. There was one labeled Honey Island Swamp Monster and a little piece of masking tape. And I'm thinking, oh, could this be what I think it might be? First, it starts off with his boat ride up the river and through the swamp, and then the tree blind that he used to sit in. And then after a while, something just starts walking across the swamp. He was up probably about 100 yards in the tree blind away from it. So he must have got closer than we thought he did. And I asked my grandmother, I said, why don't you think he ever reported this, like showed this to the media? And she said, probably because he was so afraid people were going to shoot it and kill it. And he just wanted to find out more about it. And he never went to that swamp without his camera, you know, when he was really trying to find out more about this thing. And so it was just amazing that he actually captured something on film, and it took years later for us to discover it.
Dana now devotes her life to cataloging the observations of witnesses and exploring potential habitats. She has also written 2 books on the subject. In short, the monster of the bayous has become her obsession. She regularly travels the waters of the bayou looking for the creature.
Sure you don't want to go with me this time? Well, one day I'm going to come back with him and you're going to be surprised. Or at least with some more evidence. I'm taking my camera because I don't want to ever be out there without it in case I come across some type of evidence that, you know, that would prove that there is something out there. And I'm going to put my hat on because I don't like spiders getting in my hair. Okay, y'all ready? Dustin, I'm gonna take him with me because I trust him to get us in and get us out. So, it's my nephew. We're gonna go in through here, down this slough, and look for any signs along the banks to where a good place to get out, walk into, a good opening, just to see what's at, you know, if there's any kind of new evidence out here.
Dana was 8 years old when her grandfather found the footprints of the monster and 14 years old when he died. Her youth was rocked by the pursuit of this monster.
There's a few people that maybe live year-round, but a lot of times people just come out here on the weekends to stay at those. We used to have a houseboat around that corner when I grew up. Come here every weekend. I remember we used to jump off the top of the houseboat into the slough. Nowadays, I think I wouldn't let my kids do it. My mom said, "Mom, you let me jump off that roof?" But yeah, we had a lot of fun out here. I'm probably a little bit scared, but I'm always try to stay alert and hopefully if I do see this thing that he won't try to hurt me. But I just would like to see it, you know, just to see what my grandfather saw. I've been in this area a long time, but I mean, you could say you know something, but it changes through the seasons. And like, say when Hurricane Katrina hit this area, they had so many logs and vegetation, just everything just was tore up. So many trees fell in this slough, and then everything just grew rapidly. Like.
Although she's very familiar with the location, it's important not to underestimate the savage nature of the bayou.
And you might know it. You could go in there and think you know the swamp. You could get so turned around in a swamp and get lost so easy. So it's good to keep a phone on you in case. Hopefully you'll get a signal if you got lost. But there's been a lot of people, hunters mostly, that get lost out there and they have to call someone, you know, they have to get search and rescue to go find them. Going really deep into the swamp right now. Got to go deep to see. I think the deeper you go, the more chances you might come across something. That looks like a good spot to go in, so just pull us up there. I'll let you lead the way. You hear that? Dustin!
The bayou is incredibly hot in summer, usually above 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit with high humidity. Here, plants and wildlife take precedence over human activity. In addition to well-known predators like alligators, the bayou is full of small species. raccoons, reptiles, turtles, and many varieties of spiders. In short, the swamp monster isn't lacking for food.
Ooh. Dustin, I'm in a spider web. Can I get, if it's a spider, don't tell me, just get it off. What?
We ain't got one.
Gotta watch for snakes.
All Louisianans will tell you that the bayous are an intriguing place. But to believe in the existence of a monster, that's a line the Holyfield brothers are not ready to cross.
Some people do, some don't. I believe it's just like anything else, that a legend or myth they try to keep alive, you know. Some people, nobody actually really believes it, I think. They just want to believe it.
Dana has carefully preserved the casts of footprints that her grandfather made in 1974. But today, the Holyfield brothers challenged the authenticity of that evidence.
Yeah, well, Harlan and them was supposed to find some tracks over on the gas line. Ever how long it's been that gas line out there, been through there, right after they put that through, they found them tracks, supposedly. But Harlan had a camp right there by it too, you know, right by the gas line on Coupland Lake. I don't know whether to believe him or not to believe him, but I really don't think much about the Harlan. No. I just walked up to a little drain that comes in behind that camp. That Harlan Ford, whoever who that was, built the camp. And I was standing there and I happened to glance down in the bottom of it, and all I saw was the foot sticking up out of the mud and leaves. Didn't see the shoe. And it was covered up with mud and leaves except for the foot. It was sticking like that up out of in the bottom of that slough. Without a doubt, you can look at the bottom of the shoe and see the molds from up here, and it's identical. The day Rick found that foot, we laid it out on the front porch at Daddy's, put a camouflage suit of clothes in, stuffed it full of rags. And when Harlan and Dan got out of that vehicle, Harlan was saying, yeah, that's him right there, you've got him. And it wasn't nothing but an artificial foot, you know. Who you reckon put them tracks on that gas line? Harlan Ford put them on there.
He claimed that he had the shoe with the track glued on it that was found near my grandfather's camp in the mud. And then he tried to say that those were my grandfather's shoe. You know, we first thought, well, I went to look at this. I wanted to see this shoe with the track and compare them with the one I had. And for one thing, the shoe was little. My grandfather's foot would have never fit in that foot because he stood 6'4". Ricky Holyfield was about, and the shoe was small. To me, they didn't, I mean, it looked like long fingers with no webbing on them glued to this shoe.
But this doesn't worry Dana. She still hopes to capture the swamp monster.
See, like, this mud's soft, and if there was, you know, this would be a good place if it came through here to be able to see a track, because it's still soft, because this used to have water over it not too long ago, and the water dropped, so all this is soft mud. Wait up, Dustin.
Someone even said, maybe it's one of those Highland cattle that has the long, you know, the Highland cattle has the long hair on it. I said, you think I'm stupid? I was born and raised on a farm. I grew up on a farm. I know cows. I know Highland cattle. This thing walked on 2 legs. It walked like a human, but it wasn't human.
And those who believe in the existence of the monster always pay special attention to the tracks on the ground. Who knows?
You see the toes in the front? He was chasing something, a deer or something up in there. Something came in here really fast. See the tracks going up in there? Wide stride, too. See, whatever it was on the front there, those nails dug in right on the front of that print there, right in the mud as he stepped in there. That foot that's about 1 foot long right in there. And those claws dug right up on the front there. People find prints in the mud, like that one that we saw over there. I don't know if that was or not. It could have just been an anomaly, but it might be. You don't know. But hunters out here that have been hunting out here, hunting for various things, wild hog, turkey, and things like that. There's some stories that they've had of coming in contact with one of these things out in the middle of the swamp, out in the middle of nowhere out here.
The Holyfield brothers have in their possession what they believe to be proof beyond doubt that the swamp monster is a hoax.
There you go, that's the shoe. That's the foot. It still got swamp mud on the sole. Still got it in it. That fits it perfect because you see that hook, how that toe's hooked right there. See how that V out in there? That right in there? That's all in that footprint. All that thick stuff there is all what it's made out of, I don't know. They cut it out with plywood and then put that to the board and then put whatever that is on it. That's just like I found it was just like this when I found it. All of this was in the mud, covered up with leaves and mud. Nothing but that foot was showing. Harlan knew who made that thing. Harlan probably got his handprints all on it somewhere. If you could find the fingerprints on it. DNA in the inside. Plastic here, you'd probably find their old DNA up in that shoe.
But Dana remains unwavering. For her, the incredulity of the Holyfield brothers only reflects an old feud between neighbors.
I was told that Ricky Holyfield and my grandfather had disputes over the years because they didn't want him hunting in their territory. They were very territorial about their hunting ground. And so we thought, well, maybe he's saying it was a hoax to keep all the monster hunters away from there. And any news media or anybody that would have tried to go in there into their hunting territory and disturb their animals that they like to hunt.
And if that famous shoe had served in the filming of a movie?
Then, after I found the letter that Pat wrote, I thought, well, maybe, because he mentioned that Eagle Films wanted to come and do a documentary film or some type of movie about the swamp monster.
After we found that foot, the movie business shut down up here.
Yeah, then
no longer here.
Down there, huh? He moved down by Davis Atlanta down there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure did. And after that, Harlan probably never made that. He probably had somebody make that, you know. Some of the movie people may have made that, what have. But he was going to make some money out of it, and that's what it was about. After we found it, that was it. No more movie. Honey, Al Swamp Monster up here either. You didn't hear nothing about it anymore.
So maybe they asked, and he did say he gave them a track. That's what it was said in the letter. He gave them a track. Maybe they left the shoe glued on the track. And that would explain if Ricky Holyfield found it, you know, because Pat may have taken them back there and, you know, let's go, let me show you the area and stuff. And they might have done some reenactments or something like that.
The story of the shoe found in the bayou made it into one of the newspapers of the time and seriously damaged Dana's grandfather's credibility.
Believe it or not, Ricky Holyfield went hunting rabbit recently, and he said he came up on more than he bargained for. The foot of the Honey Island Swamp Monster. For about 2 years, the story of a Yeti or Bigfoot type monster in the Honey Island Swamp has circulated among hunters and fishermen in the area. Persons have reported seeing it, liars, hearing it and tracking it. But until Holyfield went hunting and said he found the foot, there was no tangible evidence except for a plaster cast made of the creature's track. That's all they had. And it goes on to tell about picking it up and all that bull. And who was with it? Yeah.
Mosquitoes. Those mosquitoes are coming out now. How'd you get through there, Dustin? keep on investigating until we find something. But it's starting to get dark, so I don't want to get lost out here in the dark. I mean, we're not that equipped right now because we don't have a gun on us, so I don't want to be out here too late.
Really don't make a lot of difference to me what folks believe.
And yeah, it don't matter.
As long as I know what happened, you know.
Dana will continue her research in order to capture the swamp monster.
Well, we went out into the middle of the swamp and we looked for evidence. We didn't really find any footprints or anything that you could collect and bring home with you, but we did hear something, and I got in a spider web, so that did it. We heard something, but we got a little closer. Maybe next time we're gonna come across something better and see what happens. Just keep looking for it.
Despite the lack of hard evidence, some Louisianans firmly believe in the existence of the swamp monster. But what motivates their belief?
Mystique, mystery. It's just human nature. That's all it is, it's human nature. Like anything else, it's when you're a little kid, you don't want to open up the closet because it's dark. But you're dying to know what's in there. You just want to know what's in there, you know? Or you don't want to look under your bed because you know there might be something lurking under there. And that's how the swamp is. When you're riding through there, or you looking, when you're looking at that area, and you want to see something. You want to see something. You want to know something is in there, and we know there's nothing in there. It's just an idea, you know. I mean, and that's what that is. That's working on your psyche, supposedly, you know. I mean, in other words, like the kids say, psych. Well, that's exactly what it is. It's psyching you up and letting you think that there's something in there, and there really is nothing there. What can I say?
Okay, there have been reports, as is common in many areas of North America, of a swamp monster. We regard these reports with a healthy skepticism. But many people actually still believe that there is such a thing in the Honey Island Swamp. I don't believe that there is a monster in the sense that people generally talk about it. And there are an awful lot of animals in the swamp that could be confused with a monster that looks roughly human. We've had many reports of bears. And if you get only a quick look at a bear, especially if it happens to be standing and looking around for danger, then your eye can be very easily deceived. So in many cases, people will see something like a bear, and their brains will tell them that's humanoid. It looks like something that is kind of human, but hairy and not quite right.
David Shute of Pearl River is among those who will not budge. What he saw was no common animal.
I've seen just about every animal the swamp has to offer. I did have a incident with a panther, and I know how he moves. This wasn't that. He comes straight down like a little slough, a little narrow gully where the water washes away the mud. And that cat come right down the center of that trucking. You know, it let out a scream before it come through there, and when it come through there, it was moving. And he stays low to the ground. Now, he can leap like what happened to me, but there's no way that he has the height. I mean, and there's no way he's gonna swim with his head below water. You know, there's nothing that can do it. Nothing that can do it. No other explanation. You know, Something happened, though. Something happened.
I mean, I'm always going to be on the lookout because, like I said, there's been too many eyewitnesses that have seen this thing or these things that I do think there's more than one.
No, it was not a costume. Have you been to Louisiana in August? You couldn't wear a costume like that. You would die in heat stroke. You know, it's 100 degrees with 100% humidity. You couldn't wear it 5 minutes. I know what I saw. I just don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. But I need to. Yeah, I need to. Because I do, probably once a month, I'm there checking again. Because I don't live close there right now. But every time I'm in this area, I'm back looking.
I'd like to know what's out there. I really would. But on the other hand, if it is still out there and it is existing, I'd hate for anybody to bring it any harm. Because it's like anything else, just trying to survive.
I would like to see it with my own 2 eyes. You know, that is something that I feel like I need to do one day, and I guess that's why I keep looking for it, but I don't know what I'll do if I see it. I might faint. Maybe I'll just wave and say, hi, you know, don't kill me. But no, I don't know, I just feel like I know something's back there and I'm always gonna look over my shoulder.